All right, well, welcome everyone to week 2 of Secret Selling to the Affluent Traveler. We're going to cover today the material from module 2. We will go over any questions you may have had from last week. I know, Suzanne, you had a question about the lifetime value calculator and how that works. I'll cover that here in just a second. And then we'll jump right in and do a review of the material. And then as same as last time, this is classroom type. This is ask me any questions, hit me up, share any ideas that you may have that have worked for you on different things. Because the best, in my opinion, the best learning environment is from your peers. I just happen to be the person who helps facilitate that as we go through. All right, so let's jump in here and let me do a screen share real quick. I want to go in and do lifetime calculator share. Okay, so what you're seeing right now is in module 2, you had a couple of downloads that you could use, and this particular one is the lifetime value calculator. And we talked about this in module 1 about identifying who your most important customers are, using basically the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule of 20% of your customers are going to provide 80% of your revenue. And if you go through the exercise, you'll find that it may be, it may be a 70-30 or, 60-40, depending on how many customers you have right now. The more customers you have, the closer it'll probably get to that 80-20 rule. But I think the question was, Suzanne, how do you go about using this?
Yes.
And as you can see, so I am not an analyst. So I had an analyst I used to work with at WinStar actually developed this for me. And I told him what I wanted, and he put it together, and they use this for forecast, similar type things for forecasting. But it gives you the opportunity of, like here, so your actual. So let's say John Q. Public has booked one trip with me. The commission was $300. He booked the second trip with me. What commission was roughly $300. Did one that was a little bit more than that. It was commission was $450. Then he dropped back down, and so on and so on. And so you can use this by using these numbers. What happens is it averages it out over 10-year, the next 5 years as far as what the potential is. Now, let's assume that this is someone who, okay, they booked the first one, they did nothing there. I'm going to put let's move here. So year 2, you were in business, they did nothing. Year 3, nothing. They might have done something there in year 4, and then they did nothing there. And then let's say they died. Put a 0 there. Boom. So now their total lifetime value is what they've actually done.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And does that clear it up a little bit for you?
Totally. Yes.
Okay. And so you can just just plug those numbers in, and then take a look at it. And then does everybody know how to sort a spreadsheet?
No.
Go ahead and tell us.
Okay. I don't know if I should be the one to tell you how to do this, because this is definitely not my cup of tea. But so what I would do here is go up here to sort, and then I would do a custom sort. It's gonna. Okay, hang on. So what I want to do here is I'm going to highlight these all the way across. Custom sort. Well, maybe that doesn't want to do. Found. Oh, data. Yeah. Okay. Continue with current selection. I haven't seen that. Okay. So, and what will happen is this will pop up. And how do you want to sort it by? Column A, B, C, whatever. So you want to sort it by column L in this case.
Perfect.
And you want to do, you can do smallest to largest, largest, smallest, whatever. And then what will happen is it will actually sort it, but it'll also keep the customer. It's important that you keep it identified with column A, which is the customer, which has the data in it. So when you're sorting, and you can play with this, you can't break this. Just don't, as long as you don't save it, you're fine. And if you do and it screws up, just download it again. It's part of your downloads in module 2 or module 1. So play with it, and then just go in and you can look. What'll happen is you'll be able to see, your good customers are going to be, through here. You're going to have, let's call it let's say that I'm going to just throw some numbers in here. 500. Da, 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 da. So you're going to see this. You're going to have some numbers usually, you know, in the thousands up through here, and it'll come down, and then it's going to drop dramatically where you're only going to have people who book with you one time, and you'll just have, you know, you'll be down into the 300-400, whatever. So the people who are going to be in this 1,000+ range, you know, who've done multiple trips with you, those are the ones, we call it, you know, the 80-20 part, your most important customers. Those are the ones that you want to, it's important to identify who they are, because you want to pay better attention to them. Some customers are more important than others to you. And you know, so everybody's not created equal. So those that have come to the dance with you, you know, dance with them. Keep them happy. Communicate with them constantly. You know, you've all been given access for 60 days to the Power Players Club, which has a ton of resources in there. But there's also another course that used to actually sell, and I decided to incorporate it into that program because it was just it's an important one, and it's more of it's called the Sales Acceleration System. And it goes over building a solid foundation, six principles: the solid foundation, attraction marketing, prospecting, sales, retention marketing, and then growth. And this is where we identify, part of this is for that growth piece of it, is identifying, and the retention marketing part of it is identifying who the people who are important to you. Who are the ones that are supporting you, and continuing to cultivate them. And then you'll use those same people down the road when we get to the prospecting piece of the selling to the affluent traveler piece of it. Where do you find the affluent travelers? You're going to use these customers as well as your existing prospect base to mine it for your potential customers there. But these are your fans, the people that keep coming back to you. So you want to make sure you know who they are and treat them right. And it's also, for a lot of people, they just don't know. And so this kind of just gets them in the right frame of mind for it. So, all right, does that work for everybody?
Perfect. Thank
you.
you.
All right, let me get
Yes,
out of
thank
that.
you.
Okay, let's see, don't save. I want to close that. I'm back out here. Screen sharing has stopped. Okay. Now I want to share another window with you, which would be this one. Share. Boom. All right. So let's shift on to module 2. Remember, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, just be sure, you know, it's open mic. So just jump right on in and ask your questions as we go through. All right. So this is Michael Phelps. Everybody knows who he is, right?
Yes.
Most decorated
Yep.
Olympian of all time, just happens to be a good old American here. He was asked, you know, about, you know, how does it feel to be, you know, what's it feel like to be an Olympic champion? And he said, it's always as I imagined it would be. It's about visualization. It's about getting your head in the game, getting your head in the right place. It's about mindset. We talk about mindset a lot in this. You'll hear other coaches, you know, talking about mindset for this, mindset for that. Getting your head around selling to the fluent traveler is particularly important. You know, it's one thing to have it around your business, but to be able to work with people who you might find intimidating, because they are perceived to have wealth and power and influence and that kind of thing. It's not uncommon for folks just to, you know, to clam up, and it's like being starstruck at sometimes. But you got to remember, they put the pants on just like everybody else, and they in most cases they are just like everybody else. In my opinion, I've always found that the higher up they are and the more important they are, the nicer they tend to be. You know, one of my customers years ago was a gentleman by the name of John Stump, who until about 2 years ago was the CEO of Wells Fargo. Now, when I worked with him, he was not the CEO of Wells Fargo. It was two mergers before that when he was with Norwest, and he had come from this little cattleman's bank, you know, just north of Austin. I think it was in Killeen. Is where he was at, Cattleman's Bank there, and rose up through the ranks. But those are kind of people that I've always found working with them. You know, they're self-made, and they tend to be very appreciative of that, and are much easier to work with. Spouses, on the other hand, sometimes tend to not be. So make sure and that's the reality of it. So make sure you're working with the decision maker there. Okay, so the reason that so few people are financially independent today is that they place many roadblocks in their heads. Becoming wealthy is in fact a mind game. Well, so is becoming the wealthy travel agent. And this is from Dr. Thomas Stanley, who wrote The Millionaire Next Door. He died a few years ago. His daughter has updated the book. I would highly suggest that you get that book and read that, because it'll give you great insight as far as who your potential customer base is, because it's not always the people that live in the $2 million homes. It's the a lot of times it's the person who lives right next door to you, because a lot of folks save up. They want to travel in a fluent style, and they may not necessarily be affluent, or they may be the guy who owns the garage down the street and has done very well, or the welding shop. So there's perceptions that people have that are in their head. So we've got to get our head in the game, and it's very, very important, as I said, to do this. And there's some steps. And so one of the first steps that we have to take, we all know I wrote the book, Get Your Ship Together, but before you do that, you got to get rid of the crap. And the crap, it stands for criticism, rejection, assholes, and pressure. And I would love to take credit for this. It was actually a Canadian middle school teacher I saw on a TED Talk where I got this from. But it's phenomenal, and it's just a great acronym to work with here. So it stands for criticism, rejection, assholes, and pressure. Let's start with the criticism. Criticism is out there. It comes to you from all sides. A lot of times you're going to hear it from people who are close to you. You'll hear people tell you can't do something, that you can't make any money in the travel industry, that you can't, and they'll try to beat you down. More than anything else, it's trying to make themselves look better, and it's a difference of opinion. Their opinion of what you're doing. Don't let that affect and let you stray from your goal of growing your piece of the affluent business. But the biggest person who you need to deal with when it comes to criticism is yourself. And that gets down to the self-talk, where we can literally talk ourselves out of doing things that we know. Oh, I'm starting to wander. I need to get back. Doing things that we know are right. We know that they're going to progress our business, but we are afraid to do them. And we'll talk about fear later. You got to deal with that, and it's that talk, that ping-ponging inside your head. I do this all the time. When I'm faced with a decision, I tend to look at it from all angles, and I do it pretty quickly. But I'm talking to myself in my head, and a lot of times I'm trying to talk myself out of it. So try to keep that self-talk to a minimum, and what you do, keep it to a positive. Don't make excuses for what you're doing. You don't owe anybody any explanation except maybe a spouse. You're focused on growing your business in a certain direction. Don't apologize for it. This is what you're doing. You're going to take the steps that needs to be done, and the naysayers can say what they want, but you just keep going and don't dwell on it. Dwelling on it is the one thing that is kind of paralyzing. And some people who are introverts have a hard time with this, because they tend to internalize the negative. And when someone tells you can't do something, they sit there and they say, well, I can't. And you get to it, and you just, it just paralyzes you. And I'm going to talk more about that here when I talk about rejection and my personal experience with that. But dwelling on it can be such a negative thing. You got to just let it go and move on to the next steps, what you're going to do, and stay focused. Keep your head down and focused on your objectives. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Don't listen to what they're all saying. Stay focused, keep your head down, and do the work, and you'll get to where you need to be. Rejection. We're in the sales business. This is, you should accept rejection. Very, very simply put, it's part of the game. It's part of what we do. A good close ratio is 30%. An excellent close ratio is 60%, which means that you're going to be rejected 40 to 70% of the time. Okay. And so you have to just accept what that is. That's part of what goes on. Now you can celebrate it because we say celebrate rejection, celebrate a no, because it's going to get you that much closer to a yes. But it's what it is, and it's typically not personal. I tell the story in the program about, when I sold books door to door in college, and I will tell you that I got more out of that 6 weeks in the summer than I ever got out of 4 years of school. But they tell you during sales school training in Nashville that you will probably get the door slammed in your face maybe half a dozen times in the entire summer. And you're knocking on thousands and thousands of doors throughout the summer. Well, my first day, first house, I knocked on the door and had it slammed in my face. And I'm sitting there going, well, this is, I can't do this. This is going to happen every door I knock on. And I started dwelling on it, and I started thinking about it. And I, literally went and sat at McDonald's and drank coffee for 2 days. And this was the days before cell phones. And finally, a couple of days later, my sales manager came and saw what was going on and took me out, and we went knocking on doors. And we went knocking on doors, and I saw how easy it was. So I was able to overcome those fears by someone showing me, leading by example, hey, you know what? Everybody's not going to slam the door in your face. But had I continued to dwell on that, I would have gone home. And I wouldn't be standing here talking to you today. I'd probably be sitting in a cubicle somewhere, being an analyst, something I don't even know how to do, kind of thing. But it's part of what we do. Rejection is it comes with the territory. So, how we all deal with it is different. I tend to compartmentalize it. I stick it in a box in the back of my head, and as that box fills up, then I go empty it out. I'll go yell. I don't kick the dog, but I'll throw things, and we all have our ways of letting off steam. One of the ways I do is, and we'll talk about this later, is I've gotten into meditation in probably the last 10 years. That has helped tremendously by just clearing my head out. I grew up on a hippie commune laughing at these people, but now it's it's come full circle. So how you deal with rejection is up to you. Just put yourself in the situation of a telemarketer. We all get those telemarketing calls, right? Every day, right? What do? You get the call, you hang up the phone. Do you think about that person on the other end of the line? No. 2 seconds later, you have no idea what they even talked about. But had that person who called you, if they were sitting there dwelling on what, the fact that you slammed the phone down and you rejected them, and they wouldn't be able to do their job. You don't even remember who they are. So think about that when you're selling. Is typically when you're prospecting or marketing and reaching out to new people. If they say no, it's not personal, and they have moved on. So you've got to move on as well. The assholes, you know who they are. These are the people that, and a lot of times they tend to be close to you. They're the ones that tend to criticize you the most and encourage you, tell you can't do it and you need to move on. Or they're just the bullies and stuff in the business, and there's just no place for them. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but just, you know who they are, and they don't have any business with who you are and what you're doing. Pressure is a big one because it can be real and it can be self-imposed. Now, an example of real pressure are deadlines, and there's not a lot of deadlines in this world that are literally set in stone. However, those that are computer generated, like options and final payments and things like that you don't have a lot of input on. When you, Jackie, I'm going to mute you here because I'm getting some feedback. I think you just joined us. So if you need to say something, just unmute us there. But most deadlines are fluid, with the exception of those kind of things. So if a prospect reaches out to you about a particular trip, and you think that because Avoya, for instance, says we get back to the customer within 15 minutes. Well, that's great. They don't give them all the information in 15 minutes. They just touch them in the first 15 minutes. So realistically, if it's going to take you 2 hours to do the research or what you need to do to have an answer for them, tell them it's going to take a couple of hours and you get back. They're okay with that as long as you tell them the truth. Don't set yourself up for failure. That more than anything else, that's that self-imposed pressure is you're setting deadlines that aren't realistic and you can't meet. And so you want to make sure that you are setting a good, proper expectation with the customers. They appreciate it. You'll be able to work better, and it's something that's going to just really affect your business in a positive way. Don't manage to expectations. This is I call this kind of the Yelp rule. You have restaurants that may have 100 great reviews, then all of a sudden you get somebody who does nothing but bash them, and then all of a sudden they start doing business around what that one person had a problem with. And they start changing those things, even though it was perfectly fine. In fact, most people probably appreciated it even more from the other 999, versus the one person. So don't manage to them. Deal with them, deal with them offline. That's a problem person. You deal with them. You walk through, and you have a process that you can do to help solve their problem. But don't change the way you do business. That's why I say don't manage the expectation. Don't change the way you do business to that one, and because one person complained or 2 people complained. Now, if you have 100 people and 50 of them complain, well, then maybe there's something to that, or 20 of them that there may be something to that. Maybe you need to look at that. But if it's just 1 or 2 people out there, don't manage to those expectations. That's something that you shouldn't do. How do you deal with pressure? There's a lot of ways to do it. Exercise, walking, meditation, swimming. We all have our own ways of doing this. I typically, even when I was working in a corporate office, I would go for a walk every couple of hours. Even if it was just around the block, just to clear my head, just to think, just to get away from, and just to step away for a minute and to be able to do it. Meditation, as I said, I grew up on a hippie commune. I was around it all the time. I rebelled against that. Now it's come full circle. I've found that it is one of the things that works very well for me, just to clear my mind. In fact, how I kind of got turned on to that was there's a newscaster on ABC. I forgot his name, Dan. I forgot his last name. Anyway, he actually had a nervous breakdown on the air, and he wrote a book, Meditation for the Fidgety Skeptic, or something like that. And I read that book. I was like, wow, that's me, kind of. I can relate to this. So I don't go overboard. I'm not deep into it. I don't go to these retreats and stuff, but I do spend a few minutes, alone every morning and just get my thoughts together and that kind of thing. So whatever works for you to deal with the pressure, I guess is where I'm going with this. Whatever works for you, use it, and do it on a regular basis, not just when the steam's about to explode from the teapot there. Any questions?
All good.
Excellent. Jackie, you do have the ability, I believe, to unmute yourself if you need to.
I do.
Okay, perfect. We were just getting some feedback from your end when you joined.
Okay.
Okay, so mastering the mindset of the wealthy travel agent. As I said, module 2 and module 3, module 2 and module 3 are all about getting your head in the game, getting your head in the right place, because it is such an important piece of what we're doing. Anybody can sell to the affluent traveler. Anybody can sell luxury travel, but you've got to put yourself in the right situation, in the right place to be able to do it. It is all in your head. What's the difference between me and pick anybody out there, whether that's successful in what they're doing. We all have pretty much born with same body, same brain, same everything else. It's what we do with it, and it's where we put our head, and that's where it's at. That's really the difference between me, you, the person next door to us. It's all in our head. It's all in how we approach and what we want to do. Think about this. Who are you afraid of? What are you intimidated by that is holding you back from getting to that next level and making that sale to the wealthy traveler or to the affluent traveler. Think about that. As Henry Ford says here, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So by getting your head in the right place, you're able to address, a big step here is, and this is one of the exercises, is who are you afraid of? What are you intimidated by? Who are they? Write down the names if it's a name that you're looking at, or a type of person or an income level. A lot of people just because, are intimidated by people just because of the amount of money they make. Doctors, lawyers, dentists, professional people, but hey, you know what? The crane operator down the street, in a lot of cases, makes as much money as them. The longshoreman makes as much money as some of these guys do. Police officers, most police officers are six-figure earners. So there's some perceptions that we have of people in that, maybe they're too good or maybe they're not good enough. And the reason, and you just look at that and figure out what that is and put that down on paper. Fear. Does the fear control you or do you control it? It's natural to be fearful. In fact, it's a good thing to be fearful. We talked when I first got on about, climbing Mount Rainier. There's some big crevasses that in the middle of the night when you're going up and you're on that trail, which you don't realize is literally, less than a foot away from a 100-foot drop. It's a good thing I can't see it at night, because when you're coming down and you see it, and you're like, holy crap, this is, so you're controlling the fear going up because you don't necessarily know it's there. Coming down, it was a lot harder for me to come down those routes than it was going up them. So fear is something that you can get your head around and channel that, but it's perfectly normal to be afraid of things. It's just what you do with that as you go. This is a big one. Stop worrying about things you can't control. I think it's like the 99% of things, you can't, that you worry about aren't going to happen, or whatever that number is. I'm a firm believer in that. And it was hard for me at first to really come to terms with this and stop doing that. And I think part of it came with age. Patience and control came with as I grew older. But I stopped worrying about things I can't control, things that aren't, I can only worry and do things that affect me. And so that's where I say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to focus on what I want to do and not worry about what everybody else is doing. A prime example of this, get on these discussion boards on Facebook. Oh my gosh, it's like for lack of another word, it's a bitch fest. But people talk about, well, so-and-so's doing this, so-and-so's doing that. Don't worry about them. What are you doing for yourself? If you spend as much time focused on what you should be doing as you are worrying about what everybody else is doing, you would be light years ahead of where they all are. So focus on what you can control. Creating a positive work environment is key, and that has to do with the people who are around you. We all, I think, work from home. So brighten it up, whether it's putting, for me, I like to listen to positive music, listen to, motivational tapes, songs, whatever, whatever works for you to do is to create that positive environment. Part of that is I get out of my office twice a week too. I go down to Starbucks and I work from there. Just stick my headphones on and that way I can just type out my columns, but I'm around people and I get energy from people. And you may be the same way. So what works for you is what I'm going to suggest, but keep it positive, because if you get in an environment that's constantly beating you down, people telling you no, you can't do this. And it's going to eventually, it's going to affect you. It cannot affect you. So limit the amount of exposure you have to a negative environment there. Have a choice. I came across this one day, stand up, stretch, take a walk, keep walking, board a plane, go to Key West, never return. That's my dream. That is my wife wouldn't agree with that, but you can't see it. I got my golf shirt on, but what you don't see is the shorts and flip flops below the belt line. But that's how I am. I mean, this is I try to have a good attitude, but it's the first thing people notice about you. It always is. So try to be upbeat, positive, optimistic, as opposed to pessimistic. And people like that. They're attracted to that. And it's a choice you make every day. You roll out of bed, you can make a choice to be miserable and negative, or you can, hey, you know what? This is going to be a great day. I sing this stupid song every day that my wife hates it, but it was what we sang when I was in college selling books. It's a great day to be a bookman. It's a great day. I know, great day to be a bookman. Everywhere I go, ho, 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 goodbye. No sunshine, goodbye, doubt and fear. Great day to be a bookman and be of good cheer. Hey, and that kind of gets you pepped up. It's things that you do that get your head in the right frame of mind to take on the day. And people notice that attitude. And this is a key thing here. People do business with people they like. So don't give them a reason not to like you. People like positive people. Okay. So they'll continue to work with you. As we're getting close to the end of this is a key piece of this as well. Getting your head in the right place is so important, because you need to be able to carry on a conversation and be able to approach people without fear and intimidation. But a lot of this has to do with your relationship with money. And we talk about your pucker point. What's your pucker point? What is it that makes you so nervous, so scared? What is that dollar figure that you're afraid to ask for? Okay. And how, what is that? For a lot of people, it's might be $5,000. For some people, it might be $10,000. For a realtor, for instance, depends on your profession. So in our profession, $100,000 is a lot to spend on a vacation. Is it a lot to spend on a house? No. Okay. So there's perspective there. So it's not a problem for a realtor to ask for 100 grand, but for a travel agent, travel professional to ask for 100 grand, that's a big deal. And that's breaking out and sweating buckets and things like that, because it's a discretionary purchase. It's not a need, it's a want. And so, being able to ask for that amount of money. So how do you feel about money is key. The type of relationship you have with it. I grew up poor. My family, my parents are artists. My dad's salary in 1970 was like $7,000 a year as an associate professor at the University of Georgia, and we, our tables were old wire spools. Our furniture came from Goodwill. Our clothes came from there. That's how I grew up as a kid. So my relationship with money it's something I aspired to. It's something I wanted. I saw that it provided good things for people. And that was something that was important to me. Let me move on down here. But for other people, you may associate, money with a negative, where it's, you may have had a family member who had a drug or alcohol problem, and all the money that came in was channeled into, rehabs, or growing up poor, not having enough money to pay the bills, and because of that, the power got shut off. So we all have our, ways we think about money and how it affects it. The reality of it is, money is a tool. Money is a tool for people to get what they want, and that's exactly how people who tend to be affluent or travel affluently use money as. It's not something that they sit and nickel and dime and talk about. They want good value for what they get, but it's a tool to get the things that they want. And so keep that in your mind as well. Are you selling out of your own pocketbook? I had this discussion yesterday with one of the folks. I believe it was Carol, who was on the phone yesterday. She ended up making her first significant sale for her business. It was $20,000 cruise sale. In her mind, she was like, there's no way anybody will pay more than $3,000 for a cruise. And this was all on Royal Caribbean. The difference was just a standard room versus the suite that they wanted. Nobody's going to do it, until she asked for it. And you know what the answer was? Sure, no problem. That's what we expected, because people who travel affluently are typically well traveled, and they have realistic expectations. So if there's a trip that they're looking for, let's say a Mikado Safari, which is typically 15 to 20,000 per person, on average, and you come up with this family of 5, well, it's going to be $85,000. Okay, they expect that number. But if you're selling out of your own pocketbook, you're going to be very reluctant to throw that out there. So again, it's a mindset thing. Is why would anybody pay $85,000 for a vacation? It may be that you're comfortable selling something for 8,500. Well, put another zero in front of that. Now you're at 85,000. That's your pucker point. Okay, that's what makes you uncomfortable. Once you make a sale like that, and you're going to progress up through this, it becomes easier. It becomes easier to ask for the money, and the fact that they're expecting this should take away that fear of selling out of your own pocketbook. Does that make sense?
It does, Dan.
Yep.
Okay, good. Because it's
Question.
yeah.
So for the affluent, those, because I haven't really met and a lot of these people yet. I know a few, right? But when they're what I'm trying to ask, because you say they expect it, right? So is it the fact that they already know about Mikado safaris themselves, or is it that maybe they're speaking to their friends who travel? Like how are these people, in your experience, learning about where they want to go and making their decisions?
Well, it's all of the above. So when it comes to where do they want to go and all of that is, by the time they get to you, they typically, so people buy destination first. And I don't care what level you're at. They all, and even World Cruise is a destination. So they're folk, they want to do a destination first. They have a rough idea how they want to go based on how they typically travel. So if they typically stay in Ritz-Carlton hotels and things like that, they know what that costs. They have a good idea of what that is. They fly first class. They know what that is. Okay, so that all adds up to a dollar figure. Now, when they're looking at a safari in Africa, I can guarantee you they've done a lot of research on that. And the names that are going to come up are Kern Downey, Big Five, Mikado, and other A&K, Tauk, things like that. So they're going to see prices. They're going to know what they are. So in their mind, they have an expectation. What they're looking for is somebody to do it for them, because they know where they want to go. They know roughly how they want to travel to be there, but they need somebody that is going to take that and turn that into a vacation experience for them. They know they can do it themselves, but they don't have time, or do they not really want to? They want somebody to do it for them. And that's where you come in. And so that's when I say that there's an expectation. They already know what it is. They've done the research. They're well-traveled people typically. Even folks that aren't what you would call affluent or wealthy or whatever. One of my best customers that I had, that she was a retired school teacher that spent $25,000 a year with me on Regent Seven Seas or Regent cruises, by herself. But that's because she wanted to travel in a affluent lifestyle, and that's how she sacrificed in other areas to be able to afford that, because that's what she wanted to do. So yes, they know what it costs. If you're talking to someone and you throw a figure out there and they're surprised by it, well, then they haven't given it a lot of thought, because they should know, even if they don't know an exact dollar figure, they should know that roughly what it's going to cost.
Okay, perfect. Sounds like my kind of client then.
Oh, they're good clients to have.
I love decisive people.
They're good clients to have. And once you get one and they're happy with you, well, that's going to help you open up your whole network of people that they have, because they all affluent travelers tend to also socialize in their own same socioeconomic groups. So their friends, their family, the people that they associate with are very similar to them. So then when you start asking for the referral, which we'll get to later on, then that's going to open up, huge venues for you there. Does all this make sense?
Okay. Yes. Great.
Okay, now I want you to picture in your head. So let's go down the list here. So there, Jackie, what's the most expensive trip you've sold?
Unmuting. 8475.
84,000?
No, 84. 8400. I'm
8,400.
rich.
Okay.
Shoot.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well, start somewhere.
Yeah.
Suzanne,
32,000.
32,000. Susan,
40,000?
40,000. Buffy,
40,000.
40,000. How many of those have you sold? Just one, or have you sold a number of those? And I'm speaking to those of you that have done more than 30. Do you have a number of those that are, say, in the $20,000 range?
I have a
I've
total
had a
of 3.
couple.
Okay, so you have them leading up to that. So Jackie, where I'm going with this is you don't just usually start at a 40,000. It's usually something that you build up to because you become more comfortable with your client base. You become more comfortable with the products you're selling. You become more comfortable asking for larger sums of money. So your next steps up, you got a couple of you that are at 40,000. I'm going to say, you start putting it out there in front of people that you sell world cruises, you sell African safaris, and put these brands out there. I typically, I think that once you start telling people what you're selling, they're going to start coming to you for that, and you'll be attracted to them. Or they'll be attracted to you. And those products, if you're marketing higher end products versus, if your cookie cutter stuff that you get through your consortia or your host agency marketing, you're going to need to take better control of that and put the products you want to sell in front of your client base and your prospect base. Then you're going to see those sales of $30, $45, $50,000 and up will start increasing slowly, but you will start seeing some movement there. And then again, in later chapters or module, we're going to talk about how to use those people that you're already doing business with and that as your prospect base to get referrals, a systematic way of getting referrals to get to the people that you want to continue to do business with. So if it's hard for you right now, so Jackie, 8,400, that's not a bad number, but what's your goal? Let's set a goal to get you to 20,000.
Well, I can already say that 8,400 actually came from an interesting story, but it came from actually having a conversation and letting the person know what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, that's kind of why I asked about the marketing.
Yeah.
Because I haven't presented it,
Okay.
so no one really knows. So that's been my angle for the last 3 months, is just repositioning my messaging.
Yeah. So the focus of this program and most of what I do is sales focused. So we focus on prospecting, meaning the proactive part of going out and working with people, getting the systematic referrals to people who you want to do business with, people who are your ideal customers. Marketing is a reactive strategy, and it's a very important piece of this. And we're going to talk about that as well. But, this is not a marketing program, but you do want to be able, you need to tell in the marketing that you do, you need to tell them what you're selling. Not that you're selling $299 carnivals, but you're selling, $8,500 per person regents kind of thing. That's where you need to get with this, with your marketing, because that positions you, that develops you as the brand. But to really grow your affluent business, it's a proactive prospecting strategy. And again, we'll get to that. And it almost, I call it referral marketing because that's what it is. But the term prospecting tends to scare people. But it is, it's a form of marketing, I guess, combination hybrid of marketing and prospecting, because you're using your existing customers, you're using people that who are close to you to get to people that you do want to do business with, your ideal customer that fit your profile. Not just asking for a referral for any business, asking for specifically the people and the products you want to do business with. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's why you're here. It
Right.
should be why you're here, is to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to do that. Okay, pucker point. We talk about your pucker point, and that's a number. What is the number that makes you sweat? What is it a number that makes you so uncomfortable asking for it that it's something that you want to strive for? That's a goal that you want to be able to do. For me, my pucker point was 100,000. You know, I had progressed up, you know, I went through the, you know, through the 20, 30, 40, $50,000 trips. When you get to those points, and I think you'll all agree, when you see people who are spending 30 to $40,000 on a trip, you know that there's an audience out there that's going to spend more. And so you get more comfortable with that. But I described my first six-figure sale. Once I broke through that $100,000 barrier, you know, it became a fairly regular thing. You know, because you know they're out there, you're comfortable selling to it, and it's, you don't flinch. But your pucker point is your flinch point. And you work through that. We all have them. And again, that's a moving line that you have throughout the thing. Okay, emotional roller coaster is important to because we're in the sales business, and selling comes in cycles. And if you're not familiar with the cycles, this can be just sales in general can be a very tough gig. I guess is the best way to put it, because you know there are a lot of ups and downs. You know, you get that first somebody who reaches out to you, and they're looking for that, let's say that African safari. You get excited about it. You start thinking mentally how much you're going to make off of this, and you get up, and you get going, and you give them the pricing on it, and describe the package to them, and then you know you tell them that, or they'll tell you they'll get back to you, which you shouldn't do. You need to get back to them. The onus should always be on you, but you don't hear from them, and then so you start getting, okay, well the price was too high. They're doing this or doing that, you know, and then you get down and you start going down into the, you know, the trough of despair down there, and there's some fearful things going on, and then you get that phone call from them, and oh yeah, you know what, we're going to move forward with this. Life got in the way, but thank you for continuing to follow up, because you should always be following up and keeping it in front of mind to them. But life gets in the way. You know, people get sick, things happen, job changes, lots of stuff happens. Doesn't mean they don't want to go. It just means that they can't deal with it right then. But it's your job to keep it in front of them, front and center, with the follow-up. And then so now you're starting to get excited again and start moving back up, and then you make the sale, and then the cycle repeats itself as you go. Everybody's experienced this, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, everybody has. So the key here is to, you know, turn this, instead of like the Great American Scream Machine, or what's the one I did at Universal, which I loved. There was no lines, and I just went over and over and over. The Hulk, the Incredible Hulk thing. It was just an incredible roller coaster. So instead of doing it like that, you want it to be more like the kiddie coaster over at Harry Potter, that you know, that you put the 4-year-olds on, where it's more of a little waves of stuff. Does everybody familiar with wave season in the cruise business?
Yes.
January,
Yes.
February, March, it's supposed to be this big peak, and you get this is where you get a lot of inquiries. It's not necessarily where all the best sales months, but it's where most of the time where the phone rings and you're busy. You're doing a lot of busy work there. And then it drops down in April, May, and June, and then picks up a little bit in July and August, and then it drops back down a little bit because school starts back. And then, you know, after school's back in session, September, it starts picking back up. Well, for the major sellers of travel, the month of October is their best month of the year, which means that's coming up soon for you. So I think I talk about the sales year here. So you've got the calendar year, which is how you're judged based on revenue that's traveled, whether it's cruises, tours, whatever. That's how they judge you for your commission structure. But your selling year is September 1 to August 1st. And the reason for this is typically you know, with some exceptions, just about everything you sell from September 1st on is going to travel in the following year. So it's good to have, the number used to be, you know, try to have 50-60% of your business for the year on the books by January 1. I think that's a great thing to strive for, but it's not as it's a little bit lower now. I think it's more because the booking windows have tightened up a little bit. They're tend not to be as long, so you may be closer to 40% on that. I would strive for 60, but 40. Now, why is October the best year or best month of the year? That's because where the biggest focuses are on the high dollar products. So Europe and Alaska in particular is where if you see all your BDMs, if you're familiar with them, you never see them, you can never get in touch with them because they're working 7 days a week, 24/7, because that's where they earn their money. That's when people are booking those products, and that's why these big agencies, that's their best months. They know that, and so they gear up for that. So you should focus on that too. Expecting the highs and lows of the sales cycle. If you know what they are, you can anticipate them. It's key. This is something that is I can't overemphasize this, is don't mentally spend the money. You get someone who wants to book a $40,000-$50,000 trip. That's a fair amount of money. Let's call it 15% commission on 50 grand. That's what, $6,500? It's probably more than that. 50,000 times 0.15. Oh, it's 20. No, that's not right. 50.
7,500.
7,500. There you go. I'm horrible with math. I have my calculators everywhere. So that's $7,500. Is that a good commission?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
You better believe it. Do you have bills you got to pay? Yep. What would you do with that money? You start thinking about that, and you're in your head, you're spending it. What happens when that person decides this isn't the right trip for them? Yeah, woe is me. That's very depressing. You start drinking, you start doing all these other things because you've already, taken that money and put it where you need it to go, and now it's not there. And so don't mentally spend the money. Remember, you actually don't earn the commission. You may get paid before they travel, but it's not actually earned until the day they depart. So at any point between the time you take their deposit till the time they depart and they cancel, you may have to refund all or part of the commission that goes back. So don't spend that. Don't spend that in your head. I wouldn't spend it in your bank account either, because it's unless you have the resources, because it's something that can come back and bite you in the butt there if you're not careful. Striving for that kiddie coaster. You know what the cycle is. You know what emotions you're going to be feeling. You know what that looks like. So strive to make it the kiddie coaster. I talked about the wave season and how that used to be this big curve like this. It now also looks more like a kiddie coaster when it comes to bookings, meaning that bookings tend to be more consistent throughout the year than they are this huge spike in January, February, March, and then a huge dip down, and so on and so on. So you want to keep it like this. Now, what's so great about that is cash flow. If you're selling consistently month after month after month, then that means that you've got steady cash flow coming in. When you sell with these big scoops like this, that means you're going to have a bunch of money coming at one time and months that you have zero coming in. So it's always good to have positive cash flow and all. This is my all-time favorite quote of anybody, anywhere, at all times. And this is really what once I saw this after, and I saw this after the fact, but when I got the door slammed in my face and somebody showed me that I could do it. One of the greatest discoveries a man makes, one of his greatest surprises, is to find that he can do what he was afraid he couldn't do. I was afraid to knock on that next door until somebody came out and showed me. They led by example and showed me, and I was like, wow, the light bulb went off. This isn't that hard. Yeah, I can do this. And boom, and I went on to have one of the best summers of my life. I learned more that summer than I ever did. That's what it is. If you've ever gone up, if you're afraid, I'm afraid of heights, yet I climb mountains. But if you ever, climbed up on the high board and, walk to the end, that's a long way down. But once you jump, you find you can do it, boom, you go back, you do it again, and you start running in it. So you find that you can do things you used to be afraid that you couldn't do. You break through that barrier, that mental barrier. It's all here. Once you break through that, the sky's the limit for you.
I have a question
Yep. Go ahead.
for either you or those who have sold over my $8,500 mark. What's usually the sales cycle duration for the affluent traveler, you know, are they planning? I guess my assumption, because I don't plan long, and I feel like I take trips that cost sizable for even being in the industry, right?
Yep.
So, like, are they long-term planners? Are they kind of like on the 6-month range?
So I'm
I
gonna
think they're
go
fast.
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
think they're like pretty quick decision makers in less than 6 months from decision to travel.
Okay, that's good.
I agree. I have the same experience. I find it's 6 months or even less.
Awesome.
I concur. You know, the difference is, you know, the people that are spending 3,000 versus 30,000 is zero. And that's pretty much it. So they kind of fall into two things. There's the people who travel that way regularly, and that's the folks that we're talking about here. They typically 4 to 6 months is usually the cycle there. It just happens that, you know, they travel and at the Ritz-Carlton, or they travel on Silver Sea or Seabourn versus Royal Caribbean and Marriott. That's just what it is. So their cycle is there the same. So those are the regular ones. But the ones there's a different group here, and there's a lot of talk about this in the business right now, and that's your bucket list people. Your bucket list people, they will tend to book a year out. And the difference is, and I go back and forth on this, because bucket list people tend to be a one, like a one hit wonder. So you get them one time, they've done their trip, they mark it off their list, and you're pretty much done with them. So they're not the regular travelers that you're looking for. They're good to have, don't get me wrong. You want that, but the challenge is turning them into regular customers. And in particular, when they book something a year out, what about in the meantime? Are they doing anything else, or are they just saving up to pay for this one trip? I experienced this, when I was selling cruises. I mean, we were I'd venture to say probably the number one seller for this line called Commodore Cruises, which is no longer in existence, and they sold for $299, $399, $499, and the problem we found there was, we were doing high volume with them, but we were losing money on every transaction because they weren't well-traveled people, and they were saving up. I mean, this was their bucket list trip, was to spend $1,000 for a family to go on this 7-day cruise out of New Orleans. Well, you can't make money doing that. And so, that's kind of where I find, I differ with the industry a little bit in that, bucket list things are great because it is a source of revenue, but it's kind of a one-shot thing. And I'm more about, let's develop that repeat business. Statistically, your repeat business is less than 30%. In all the studies that I've participated in. And so if you can bump that up to 40%, that's a huge increase in revenue for you, and reoccurring revenue. And it gets back to that lifetime value of the customer. This one person might be worth one $50,000 gig. Book them all day long, don't get me wrong. But is that who you're going to spend your efforts on, trying to get them to do something else when the odds are pretty good? They're probably not going to. That's just so that's kind of where I go with this. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Oh, no, that helps great. I'm glad to hear that my assumption is correct, that it's less than 6 months.
It is. It is. It's just that's because that's the way they travel. They travel the same way. Now, one thing that you will find is that you may also, though, receive a higher rate of cancellation or changes, and that's because of jobs. And because of things, because people that tend to travel affluently have more demands on their time. And so you may see that. So insurance is a huge thing, and they know it, and they will buy it. They know what the value of the insurance is there. Action changes things. If you just sit there and you expect things to come to you, like I'm going to use marketing. If you expect, because you market things, that all of a sudden your world's going to change overnight, it ain't going to happen. It's going to happen if you take action and be proactive and go out there and find that customer. Okay. You're going to get people through your marketing, but you're going to be much more effective getting to the people that you need to get to by taking action. And action, whether that is in your marketing, your prospecting, your social networks, your networking that you do, just in general, the people that you know. Taking action in your business is going to change things. I would rather take action. And so when I met my wife, it was, she lived in Seattle, I lived in Minneapolis. And, we found that, we came to the conclusions, hey, you know what, I think we got something here. And I told her in the beginning, I said, I would rather try a long distance relationship and fail than always regret not doing it at all. And we've been together now for 15 years. So, obviously that succeeded, but had we not taken that chance, taken that action and done that, you never know. And so action will change things, and action is what you need to take to get your business where you want to do. So here are the exercises that we had. Was fear, overcoming your fear and anxiety. This is key. This is getting rid of the crap. So write down everything, every person, everything, anything that you can think of that you're afraid of, you're intimidated by, and how it would negatively affect your sales and marketing efforts. Make a long list. Just take some time. You're going to have to think about this. Then I want you to sit down and list the crap that you have in your life and what you're going to do about it. So, who's giving you criticism right now? I mean, I had a guy reach out to me a couple of years ago, and I wrote a column about this. He was getting a lot of pressure from his wife to quit the business because he wasn't making any money, but he felt, this was his calling. This is what he wanted to do. And he felt like, if he took a few more steps, he could be successful at it. But he was just getting so much pressure and criticism from his family. And that's why I say a lot of times it comes from pretty close to you that, his question was, what do I do? What do I do? And, I wrote a column about that. You can pull it up on Agent at Home. Or
I'm dying to know. Thinking he has a new.
Well, it's a decision. You either get divorced or you don't. But it's okay. Give me a year. Kind of give me a year to do what I need to do. Give me a time frame. That kind of satisfies everybody. I'm a big believer in the 3 years. It takes, if the first year is just kind of particularly if you're new to the business, it takes a year just to figure it out. And then your year 2 is where you're starting to hit stride. You're starting to do some things regularly. And year 3 and above is where you'll know whether it's going to work for you or not. But I believe you got to commit to 3 years. So, but I'm still going to suggest go to Travel Research Online or Agent at Home and go to the archives, and you can pull that up. Come to think, I may resurrect that column and put it out there. It seems to be one of the favorites. So dealing with the crap, just write it down. What are you going to do about it? What are you afraid of? How are you feeling about money? What is it that, how do you associate money? Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Is it a tool? Is it a crutch? Is it, what does that mean to you and selling out of your own pocket? Can you get past that? What are the steps you need to do to get past that if that's an issue for you? And it tends to be with most people, at least at first. And then they realize that people are really spending this kind of money. And part of it is, again, we tend to associate with our socioeconomic groups. You look at these doctors' wives and stuff, that will go to Canyon Ranch for a week. Well, Canyon Ranch is $5,000 a head for a week, plus, and you get 6 or 7 ladies doing that, and they do it, these girls' weeks 4 or 5 times a year kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm talking about. They're in the same socioeconomic groups. So if you're spending out of your own pocket, you're probably, the people who are close to you right now are probably similar to you. And so you want to expand your networks outside of that. So how you feel about money is going to greatly affect that. All right. So next week, And it will be on Tuesday, whatever date that is, but it is Tuesday at 8 a.m. our Pacific time, 11, I believe, on the East Coast. We're going to go from getting rid of the crap to getting your ship together, which was really the basis of the book. Everybody got a copy of the book yet?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
I do.
Excellent. So it came in the mail.
And I've read it.
Awesome. That's even better. You get extra brownie points. My wife has. It's been out 2.5 years. My wife hasn't even read the damn thing, you know? but yeah, that's that. So that's a bone of contention in our house. Like, come on, this is what I do. You gotta read this book. It's a bestseller. She said I read my romance novels. Well, whatever. Okay, so so we're going to talk about we've gotten rid of the crap. Now the next step is getting our ship together. Skills, habits, inspiration, and performance, and a little bit of planning in there too. And then once we get our mind in the right place, we're totally dialed in on that. Then we start, who are the affluent traveler? What do they want to do? Where do they want to go? What are they seeking? And then we get into finding them. And we do the proactive process of prospecting. And we follow it up with the sales process. Process is the key to truly being successful in anything, and repetition. McDonald's did not make, sell 1 billion hamburgers out of one store. They did it out of a lot of things. And to do that, they had to have a process to replicate it exactly the same way every time. I'm going to show you the same type of thing. Here's a sales process that you'll be able to follow, that you'll always be in control. Control is a big thing here. You can't let the prospect control the process. If you do, you'll never get the sale. And we are in the sales business, so we have to start thinking like salespeople. And salespeople prospect, salespeople follow up. Those are really your two key areas. That's where the money is. All right. Any questions before we wrap up?
All good. Thank you.
Okay. We're clear now on lifetime value. We know that, I had a brain fart and got my days mixed up. And so we're good now for next. I got a question for you. So I've been sending everything through the mail program. Kajabi's the system I use for my website and everything else. And they have a mail program that's attached to that. So that's where you've been getting all the mail from. And I've heard from Jackie and a few others that my emails are still going to spam. If I send them from danchappelle.com is through Google. If I was to send that from there, everyone would see everybody else's email address. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah, because I spent like literally 3 hours on the phone with Microsoft, and they still couldn't fix it.
Okay.
And your emails, you had 3 from even that came into spam last night. So please.
Okay, so here's what I want you all to do, and I think I put this in the initial letter, was whitelist Dan at danchappelle.com or danchappelle.com as the domain. And so what I will do is I will send from my Google Calendar, I will send the invite for next week through there. And again, everybody's going to be able to see your email address. And actually, I think that's a good thing, because then if you decide, if you want to get together and converse, then that's great. Also, I set up the private Facebook group. Did everybody join?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I'm posting stuff in there as well. So the recording of today will be posted in there. Actually, I'm gonna stop the recording now.